Hello everybody and welcome to my top 10 picks of the best Walking Dead episodes, ranked from least best to best. Walking Dead has been one of my favourite shows of all time, just behind Doctor Who, and I'm excited to get into the highest of its highs. This list was very difficult to make, let me tell you, because there were so many episodes of this show that I absolutely love. But the show now has 10 years of history and now 10 seasons and nearly 150 episodes if I remember rightly, so there's a lot to go through. How I'm going to rank these episodes is through my objective film student perspective, as well as how much enjoyment I got from the episode, along with its standout moments within the episode and overall impact the episode had on the show. Kicking off with the number 10 spot, we have the Season 2 finale, Beside the Dying Fire. This episode was absolutely phenomenal at the time. They had the largest walker herd that we'd ever seen. It had a few red shirt deaths in the mix to make it more exciting. It came off of the heels of another amazing episode, Better Angels, where we saw the death of Shane, spoiler warning. The episode kicks right into action with the walker herd swarming through the farm, with Rick and Carl having to work together. Obviously the death of Patricia and Jimmy being those red shirts that I was referring to. Tragic deaths. Didn't really care about the characters, but it was very exciting to watch, at least. Obviously, we have Herschel with his final stand of his infinite ammo shotgun, which we all know and love. And obviously, we see the barn just burn down, which is an absolute spectacle, I will say. It's just a very action-packed episode with a lot of exciting moments in there. It isn't very story-heavy, besides the fact they have to abandon the farm and they have to move on to a really interesting storyline going on from Series 2 into Series 3 of the prison. And obviously, we see a little glimpse of who will get as Michonne as well. And to cap off the whole episode, we get the amazing "we're all infected" moment where Rick reveals what Dr. Jenner said to him in the end of season 1, and it really flips the script of the show and it makes it so exciting, and it adds a new element of it that if people die, you're going to turn into a zombie whether you're bitten or not, and that is a crazy moment at the time, I will say. Great episode all around. Coming in at the number 9 spot, we have the Series 9 episode 15, The Calm Before. Everybody who knows The Walking Dead knows that this episode was fucking crazy, mostly for the ending moment, but there are a lot of really cute moments before that leading up to the big moment. But before the big moment, let's go through some of the best moments of this episode. We have the opening scene of the story of the couple from Hilltop, which is really tragic when you see their fate when it comes down to it. We have the fair and everything going well, and you have Ezekiel, Jerry, Henry reunites with Carol, and Lydia and Henry are, settling into the kingdom, and it's really nice and happy. But you have this looming fear over you, like a dark cloud over the whole thing, when you see Alpha just swanning through the fair, just having a look around, and then you see her talk to Ezekiel, and you just fear for Ezekiel's life because you feel like, oh shit, I know where this is going, especially if you know the comics. Obviously, we see Alpha's giant walker herd, which is the equivalent of a zombie apocalypse nuke. Daryl and the gang are utterly intimidated by the power that Alpha has at her disposal with that zombie herd. But Daryl is set free, and the gang head back home, but on their way home, they meet up with Sadiq, and they're like, wait, Sadiq, why are you tied up to a tree? What's going on? And then the moment happens, and everyone's hearts at home stop when they watch and see a row of pikes on top of that hill. This moment had me speechless when I first watched this. I didn't think they were going to go all out. I originally read the comics before this moment in the show, and I was like, there's no way that they're going to kill off so many characters at once. But they did. Some of them, admittedly, I didn't even know their names, but some of them I did know their names, and I was kind of, oh, that's a shame that she died, or he died, or, oh no, whatever, that's a shame. And then it gets to the final 3. You get Enid, who you had since season 5, I think. You also have Tara, who you had from season 4 with the governor. Crazy character death. And then you have Henry, who you think is going to be the replacement for Carl after Carl, spoiler warning, dies in the previous season. But no, they're just dead. They're just dead. You have this montage of seeing their loved ones looking around for them because they're missing, and then it cuts to their decapitated heads on top of a giant pike. Ugh, it's heartbreaking. Before we move on to the next episode, I want to quickly say that I love the ending speech that Sadiq has about how they defended each other in the barn before Alpha killed them all. It's a really sweet moment to end off the episode, so that those characters didn't really die in a distasteful way. I think it's nice. Alright, at the number 8 spot, we have Season 3's Episode 15, This Sorrowful Life. This is Murrell's episode through and through. Murrell was one of my favourite characters of The Walking Dead, of this whole show. He still is. And this episode is his swan song. I absolutely love how they treated Murrell in his final episode here. It is so exciting all the way through. The opening scene with Rick and Daryl and Herschel struggling with the idea of having to hand over Michonne to the governor is such a powerful scene, because these three characters we've grown to love over the few years that we've seen them. And we know them all to have grown so much, and they are known to be good people, and yet they're handing over Michonne to the governor, and it's just sad to see. Even like Daryl's come such a long way since season 1, and obviously following on from that we have the amazing scene with Rick and Murrell in that whole "you as cold as ice, officer friendly" bit, which always gets a reaction out of people watching it first time round. It's just a really good conversation, and it really tells you a lot about Murrell as a person, how he always chooses to stay on the outside of the group, and he chooses not to get attached, and that is really sad. And I love that. I love how this episode, it really explores the core of who Murrell is as a character, and I'm so fascinated with that. Directly following that, we have the scene with Daryl and Glenn, where Daryl's talking about how Murrell was horrible to Glenn and Maggie, and Glenn says how, well, Murrell needs to make it right, doesn't he? And I also am really fond of the scene with Daryl and Murrell in the generator room before Murrell heads out, and it's a really nice moment of just the two of them talking as brothers, and I really like that. Most of the meat of the episode is just Murrell and Michonne on the road, just travelling to the governor, and Michonne slowly chipping away at the outer shell that Murrell has to try to get to that moral that Murrell has deep within him, and I love that. Michonne just really starts to understand Murrell, and Murrell understands himself by the end of this episode, and he realises the thing that needs to be done. Another highlight of this episode, unrelated to Murrell, is actually Glenn proposes to Maggie, which is a really sweet moment, I won't lie, especially the scene with Glenn and Herschel talking about it in advance, which is really nice. We also have Rick's amazing speech in the courtyard, which mirrors his speech out in the woods when he's talking to them at the end of season 2, where he originally says this isn't a democracy anymore. He eventually comes around, and this episode is that turning point where he realises he can't decide everything. Not every decision he makes is going to be for the greater good. I love Rick's development, especially in season 3. I think it's amazing. And obviously the most exciting point in this episode is where Murrell finally decides to fight the governor, and he kills a bunch of men. He fights one-on-one with the governor. The governor bites his fingers off. Ugh. And then Daryl finds Murrell's zombie. So sad. So sad. Chokes me up every time I watch it. It's so upsetting, and I love how well Norman Reedus portrayed his reaction to that. How he can just continue stabs Murrell in the face, and I know that's not a hatred towards his brother. It's just a hatred to the circumstances that put those two at odds, and it's just so powerful, that scene. And Daryl's reaction is just so indicative of that, and it's great. It's a great episode, great all around. I love this episode so much. Anyway, moving on to number 7. At number 7, we have the premiere episode, Days Gone By. Days Gone By is a testament to how good The Walking Dead is. It has stood the test of time. It's the first ever episode of the show, and yet it's still on my top 10. I love this episode so much. There's so much nostalgia attached to it, and it's just been given more meaning after Rick's departure in his final episode, which we'll get to later. Don't you worry. I love the opening scene. It's just a casual conversation of two best friends, Rick and Shane, in the car, sharing chips. It's so human, and I love that it opens like that. It really portrays those two characters perfectly, if you ask me. And it's followed on by Rick getting shot and him waking up in hospital, and I have to say, the hospital sequence and everything following from the hospital, him eventually getting to his house, finding the bicycle, finding out that everyone is dead and there's corpses lying in the streets, and there's all this. That whole sequence of Rick waking up and discovering the world he's in is a masterful sequence and is directed beautifully. And if you took that whole sequence out of Rick waking up in the hospital and getting to his house and finding that his family isn't here, could be a whole short film, and it would win so many awards. It is such a beautiful moment in television. I still am so impressed at how well that was delivered as a scene. And as I was saying, obviously Rick getting home and realising that Laurie and Carl aren't there and are probably dead, at least that's what he initially thinks. It's just such a heartbreaking moment, and it really shows how good Andrew Lincoln will be in the role in years to come, obviously. I love this scene, and this whole episode is really just so strong. But I love that opening scene of him coming out of the hospital and finding his way home and seeing the destruction that's happened while he's been asleep. So good. I love Morgan, by the way. Lenny James is amazing. I love Morgan and his explanation of the dead being dead, and there has to be bites, and they have to be shot in the brains and all that. It's just zombie training 101, but I really like how well Lenny James delivers it in not a boring, monotonous way, because we all as an audience know how zombies work now, but it still is engaging because it's Lenny James and he's a great actor. So, speaking of which, his moment that he gets to shine is where he can't shoot his wife. It's just such a heartbreaking moment where he's just crying and she's a zombie, but he can't shoot her, and that will eventually lead to consequences in the future of the series and his character. So, very, very powerful moment, that as well. Love it. And obviously, the whole sequence in Atlanta. Most of this episode doesn't have any dialogue unless Rick is with Morgan or Shane. There is barely any dialogue in this whole episode, and that's really powerful. It's really clever. It's so engaging, and you really connect with Rick on this journey that he's been on. And getting into Atlanta, like I say, the big zombie horde that swarms him and completely devours his horse and chases him under the tank, and he nearly kills himself until he realizes he can escape into the tank and all that. It's just a very exciting sequence, and you think, oh shit, Rick might die in the first ever episode, which you don't think would happen, but it's very, very tense the whole way through, and I love it. And then you get that glimmer of hope when you hear the sweet voice of Glenn Rhee, beautiful boy Glenn Rhee, talking over the radio. Love it. Such a good episode. I love it so much. Anyway, next one. At the number 6 spot, we have Killer Within, the season 3, episode 4. This one is so thrilling all the way through. So much goes on. Going in chronological order, though, the first cute moment, actually, is where Glenn and Maggie wakes up and you have the moment with them. Meanwhile, you have Daryl, T-Dog, and Rick down in the courtyard, and then they're talking to the prisoners, and the prisoners want to join into the fold because of how grim their cell block is, and that's a really powerful moment for T-Dog because he wants to let them into the fold because, it's not nice, is it? We have a nice moment where we see Herschel finally walking again, which is really, really awesome after you see him get bitten and lose a leg. But this episode takes no time to kick into action, where we see the walkers in the prison and swarming the place. We have different sub-squads in the group splitting off to make sure they survive. You have Maggie with Laurie and Carl. Meanwhile, Rick and Daryl and Glenn are rushing from the outer gates to get in to save everyone. Everyone's on the edge of the seat the whole episode. It's so crazy. Then out of nowhere, T-Dog just gets bitten, point blank, and Carol is the only one to witness it. It's sad. T-Dog does the selfless thing of trying to close the gates so that no more zombies get through. I mean, he gets bitten. Can happen just like that. Meanwhile, Maggie, Laurie and Carl are in the tombs and they're trying to navigate their way without the zombies attacking them. When Laurie goes into labour, so they have to hide in a little small room. We see T-Dog sacrifice himself to save Carol, which is such a selfless thing. We had so much promise for T-Dog in season 3, but instead he just gets killed off. But at least he died saving Carol, who eventually became one of the most influential characters of the whole show. The fight in the generator room was actually really exciting as well. It's a great moment for Oscar because he needs to prove his worth to the group, and he ends up doing so when he kills the other inmate that sabotages the prison in the first place. And then the heartbreaking moment where Laurie gives birth, but she dies, and the baby's born. We get Judith, and it's sad all the way through. This scene had me choked up first time I watched it, and it was heartbreaking. Especially when you realise Carl was the one who ended up having to put her down to make sure she didn't turn. Then you just hear that really loud gunshot, and it's sad. It's sad. But this moment coming up is the reason why this episode is so high. It's just everything is finally calmed. The zombies are gone. They're missing T-Dog, and then they see Maggie and Carl come out with a baby, and Rick is like, wait, where's Laurie? And it isn't until Rick looks into Carl's eyes that he realises that his wife is dead. And that is so heartbreaking to see Rick, a character that we've grown to care about over these last 3 seasons, just collapse into his lowest point, and it is so sad. Andrew Lincoln performs this scene perfectly. It's done to perfection, and this scene has everyone in tears. I'm getting choked up just thinking about this scene right now. It's so sad. And to put a nice little cherry on top, the credits roll with no music, with no sound, no soundtrack, nothing, just the credits in silence. what a powerful episode this one was. It's crazy because obviously you think once T-Dog died, you think, oh, okay, we had our character death for this episode, and then you wouldn't expect for Laurie to be the one to be killed off as well, but she does, and it's sad. It is so sad. Anyway, right, moving down to number 5 spot. Right, this next one is a big one. This is one of the most highest rated episodes of the show, and for good reason. This one was shocking and traumatizing. It is the season 7 premiere episode, The Day Will Come When You Won't Be. This one is notorious, and here's why. The episode starts off in silence. You don't know who Negan killed after the season 6 finale episode, but you know that someone has died, someone important has died, someone has been killed off, and you don't know who yet. And you have that scene where Negan's talking to Rick. It's that right-hand man scene, and you think, shit, Negan's killed off someone really important to Rick, and you have Rick just shivering, shaking and sweating just out of fear, and then Rick just threatens him, not today, not tomorrow, I will kill you, and that's crazy. And so Negan drags him to the RV by the scruff of his neck, and it's sad to see our hero in such a low state. It's so sad to see that. All the stuff in the RV is great. It's really thrilling. It's obviously a lot of a tease, really, because you just want to get to the point where they reveal who Negan killed. But the scenes with the axe and Negan very nearly killing Rick on many occasions, and the obvious tease sequence where Rick is outside and he's getting flashes of every character that was lined up to be Lucille'd in the previous episode, so you know who is up for grabs for the kill list. So, and then once Rick fetches the axe for Negan, we go into the flashback where we see that Negan had chosen Abraham, and so Abraham goes out like a champ, saying "suck my nuts" to the big bad villain of the show. It's such a powerful moment, and the best way for Abraham to go out. It was really sad. But then Daryl punches Negan after Negan provokes Rosita, and you think, oh shit, is Daryl gonna die now as well? What the fuck is happening? Because the flashback hasn't ended, and you're thinking, well, if Abraham's dead, who else will die then? I mean, Daryl just fucking punched Negan point blank in front of all of his men. What is Negan gonna do? He just turns around and fucking decks Glenn in the head. That notorious line, back to it. Holy shit. This moment gets a reaction from absolutely everybody who watches it. Everybody who knows The Walking Dead knows who Glenn is. Glenn is that really likeable character that everyone loves but underappreciates. And it's so sad because it's so horrible to see Glenn just in this horrifying state where his eye is popped out and Maggie has to watch and all these people are crying, and so sad. I was in tears watching this. Yeah. After that, we have Rick eventually returning to the RV after he nearly dies, but they make it back safe, and Rick still needs to learn, apparently, because Negan hasn't broken him yet, apparently. So he brings Carl up, and that whole sequence where he threatens Rick to cut off Carl's arm, and it's so sad to see Rick just broken down in this really just dreadful state where he's just panicking and he's scared. And bonus points for Carl, just being a champ, absolute champ, just saying, just do it, as Rick is holding the axe to his arm, and the episode just ends with this quiet after just a horrific event has just occurred, where you see all the characters just on the ground, all these characters that survived this horrible ordeal is just broken beyond belief now, and it's sad. But this episode is notorious for that Lucille moment, as it were, so that's why it's so high on this list. And plus it was exciting to watch back for this list, so yeah. At the number 4 spot, we have yet another highly rated episode of the show, one of the most viewed episodes of the show. It is the premiere of season 5, No Sanctuary. This one is like everybody's fan favourite. I think this is a lot of people's favourite episodes, and for good reason. This one is amazing. It's just action-packed all the way through. The opening scene is just the gang in the train cart just readying up, just making weapons out of whatever they can, belts, bits of wood, it's just crazy. And then obviously the slaughterhouse scene where you see all these people getting their throats slit, and Oh, it's horrific, and you think that Glenn's going to die multiple times. They're really teasing that Lucille death in this episode, and in the slaughterhouse scene you see Sam die, that one kid that we saw earlier in season 4. Obviously the whole sequence of Carol attacking Terminus is really exciting stuff. You see all these people getting gutted by the zombies while Carol's just manoeuvring through the zombies in her disguise, in her Walker gut disguise. And during that you have Rick savaging the 2 butchers, which is, a great moment for Savage Rick, as it were. And you have the gang sneaking through the compound, which is exciting stuff. And you have Carol's fight with Mary as well, which tells you a little bit more about Terminus, if anyone cares, that is. And meanwhile this excitement is going on, we cut to stuff with Tyrese in the cabin with Judith and this one soldier guy called Martin, and this whole talk with Martin about the child and Tyrese's morals is just great build-up for an episode that comes up later in season 5. And a lovely note to end off with is Carol and Tyrese with Judith reuniting with the group as the group escapes Terminus. It's just a book ending. It's a perfect, way to end an exciting episode with a happy, amazing ending where you see Rick and Carl reuniting with Judith. It's just lovely all around. I love it. I love it to pieces. Alright, before we get into our top 3 picks, I want to quickly go through some honourable mentions that didn't quite make the cut. These episodes are the ones that would definitely be fit into a top 20 or a top 15, but just got pushed out just for the sheer amazingness of the episodes that I did choose for this 10 episode list. So the ones that are in this list are Better Angels, What Lies Ahead, The Grove, Thank You, First Day of the Rest of Your Lives, How It's Gotta Be, 4 Walls and a Roof, and JSS. Like I say, if anyone is a fan of those episodes in particular, I didn't forget that those episodes were amazing. It's just the episodes on this top 10 list are just slightly better in my opinion. Right, okay, so number 3. I just want to quickly preface this. These top 3 picks can be interchangeable. These 3 are practically tied for me, but while making this list, I think the decision to have these at the spot that they're at is how I would agree with them right now. But if you asked me what this list was in a week's time, these top 3 episodes would be in a completely different order. But for me, my third favourite episode of The Walking Dead of all time, right now, is Too Far Gone. Season 4 episode 8. Now I know so many people love this episode, and I do too. It's been my favourite episode of the whole show for a while, and it keeps being interchanged with these other 2 picks. But here's why this episode is amazing. Let me go through it. Governor kidnaps Michonne and Herschel. Great scene in the caravan with them talking to Governor, and it's like, have you changed? Have you not changed? This is crazy. You obviously see the Governor show up at the prison with a fucking tank. Then you have the Governor with Michonne's sword to Herschel's neck. Meanwhile, you have Megan getting bitten, which is a heartbreaking moment because she was such a sweet little child and all that. And yeah, we have Rick's speech to the Governor, how they don't have to fight, that we could all coexist in the prison and all that. And then Herschel dies. Herschel gets sliced when the Governor doesn't believe Rick. He says liar, and he just swipes. He swipes left into Herschel's neck, and it's so sad. You see Maggie and Beth just crying in reaction to it, and that's heartbreaking stuff. The fight breaks out, obviously. At this point, this is the same old savage Governor that we know from season 3 again, and that transpires with how savage the Governor is against Rick, and this is just a big fist battle against the 2 of them at this point, and they're just fighting to their wits' end, just beating each other to a bloody pulp as the fight goes on in the prison. Rick is still fighting the Governor, and just when you think the Governor might have actually killed Rick, the Governor gets sliced through the chest by Michonne. And it's such a satisfying moment because you've wanted this arsehole to die for a season and a half now, and finally he's dead, and Michonne's the perfect person to be killing him, and beautiful stuff. Beautiful. I love it. So good. And I do want to quickly applaud how well acted this last scene is, where Rick reunites with Carl and they discover that Judith is dead. Well, at least that's what they think. They see the pram smeared with blood on the interior and Judith is missing, and they think, oh shit, Judith is gone. The whole prison's gone. Everyone's gone. Judith is dead. Oh my god, that's what they're thinking. And amazing acting on Chandler Riggs and Andrew Lincoln. This scene is just... It's subtle, but I really like it. It's not one that gets talked about a lot, but I really, really like it. It's really powerful when Carl just starts firing into this zombie over and over and over, and yeah. It's a sad moment. It's so well acted, and I love it. This episode is amazing all the way through. Amazing acting, amazing directing, amazing action, amazing excitement. It's just so good. Such a good episode. I love Too Far Gone. It is one of the most popular episodes of the whole show, and I can clearly see why. Moving on to number 2, we have No Way Out, episode 9 of season 6. This one is the episode that we've been leading up to all the way from season 6, episode 1, where you see the giant zombie herd looming towards Alexandria. We see what transpires. Glenn nearly dies. Alexandria gets overrun with zombies. We see everybody in their houses hiding away from the zombies. But before we go into the specific moments, I want to quickly talk about how amazing the opening scene is. If you don't know what I'm talking about, there's this amazing scene at the start of the episode where Abraham, Daryl and Sasha run into a bunch of saviors on the road, and the guy on the motorcycle just talks a lot of shit and then eventually gets blown up by Daryl with the rocket launcher. It's just such a satisfying moment. He was such an eat-shitting arsehole, and it was just so satisfying to see him get blown up there. It's great. And then Abe's amazing comeback line, nibble on there. I love that. I love that opening scene. Anyway, moving into the meat of the episode, we have the crew going through the horde of zombies. We have Gabriel taking Judith to safety, which is a great turning point for Gabriel's character, if you ask me. And obviously the biggest highlight of this episode is the moment where Sam starts freaking out and then gets swarmed by zombies, closely followed by Jesse getting eaten by zombies, and then Jesse grabbing hold of Carl's hand and nearly getting Carl killed. So Rick has to cut off Jesse's hand to save Carl, and it's just so shocking. And then Jesse's older son Ron, who already hated Carl, just points a gun at Rick, and you just think, oh shit, is this little dipshit gonna end up shooting Rick? Nope. Michonne's got it covered. Michonne's killed Ron, made sure that there's no more calamities in this episode. But wait, Ron fired his pistol before he hit the floor. Rick looks over and sees that that bullet went through Carl's fucking eyeball. The amazing moment where Carl is brought in and Denise is like, okay, I've got to operate on this kid, otherwise this kid is going to die, and the kid's dad is Rick, and oh my god. And then Rick takes on the whole zombie horde on his own, and it's so badass all the way through. I love it. And eventually all of Alexandria joins in and kills the rest of the zombies, and it's really exciting stuff. I love it. It's so good. And to close off the episode, when all the zombies are dead and everybody is, we have Rick talking to Carl. Rick talks about this brave new world that he wants to create for Carl and for Judith, and I love that. It's just such a sweet little moment where Carl, who's asleep, just grabs hold of Rick's hand. It's just such a nice moment to end a really exciting episode on. I love this episode. This one is phenomenal. And now, the number 1 pick. I want you to remember, I said that these top 3 picks are interchangeable. I often dwindle between which one of these 3 are my most favourite of all time. But right now, this is my favourite episode of The Walking Dead of all time, okay? This is Season 9, Episode 5, What Comes After. Rick motherfucking Grimes' swan song. This episode I still adore to this day. This brings back everything that I love about The Walking Dead into one beautiful episode. This follows on from an equally solid episode beforehand where we see Rick get kicked off of a horse onto a rebar, and you think, holy shit, Rick's in danger here, and he passes out from the shock of it, and there's a zombie horde coming straight towards him, and you're like, what the fuck, how does he get out of this? The episode starts, the hospital flashback, and he's like, wake up, it's time to go, and all this, holy shit. This episode is amazing. You have the helicopters, which for some reason has a lot of relevance, but you don't know why as of yet, but yeah, you see Season 1 Rick talking to present Rick, and it's really trippy, but Rick wakes up, pulls himself off the rebar and onto the horse as he escapes. Enter another amazing flashback where we see him going back to Atlanta and talks with Shane, which is brilliant. I didn't expect I'd ever see Shane again after he died, but then we saw him in Season 3 as a brief little Easter egg, and then we saw him again in this episode, and they have a full conversation about Judith and about what Rick needs to do, and I love it. I love this scene. It's so good. It's so powerful as well, because at one point Shane was like the second main character just behind Rick until he died, and it's just so crazy to look back on that. Cut between those exciting moments of Rick, we have amazing scenes with Maggie talking to Michonne to try to talk to Negan or to try to kill Negan or whatever, and the scene where Maggie talks to Negan and Negan is broken, and Maggie's like, I came to kill Negan but he's already dead. And I think the best part of this episode by far is the flashback that Rick gets with Herschel. Holy shit. The fact that they got Scott Wilson back for this episode. They filmed him doing it. And I love that they did it in memory of Scott Wilson in this episode as well, because they filmed this before he died, but Scott Wilson died before we saw the episode, and it's really sad. And this episode, oh God, this moment where Rick is reunited with Herschel in this flashback is just really sad. I cried watching this, honestly, because obviously we all heard the news that, yeah, that Scott Wilson had died, and we were all shocked that they got him in this episode one last time. I'm really impressed by this scene, and it's so powerful because Rick is talking about how much Maggie's lost, and with Beth and Glenn and all that, and it's honestly great scene. I love it to pieces. And obviously following on from that, we have another fever dream moment with Rick where he is back in the hospital, which is really cool, and he comes to the "don't open dead inside" door, but it doesn't say that. It says "don't open dead outside" with the "don't" crossed out. He goes out there and there's just a sea of just dead bodies and people that we know. We see glimpses of Daryl and Beth and Carol in the piles of bodies. And obviously this whole sequence is like paying homage to the famous issue 100 cover of the Walking Dead comics. And obviously we see Sasha come back to life, come back and talk to Rick, which is great, don't get me wrong, but I wish that we'd got someone like Laurie or Carl to talk to Rick for this sequence. I think it would have been great, but regardless, it is a great moment to see Sasha back because she was kind of like the mother of like the survival group for the last like a few seasons. So, it's good that we at least got to see her. After that, Rick is eventually brought back to the campsite where the horse runs away, and he's eventually having to shoot zombies out of his way to escape them until he reaches the bridge, and Rick can't cross the bridge, and then he gets a vision of the whole group coming to save him, and Michonne talking to him and saying, "Oh, it's okay, yeah," and then realise that was another flashback, and you're like, holy shit, Rick be tripping! But no, Rick eventually makes it across the bridge just in time for the zombie herd to arrive and get across the bridge as well. And he realises the bridge isn't going to collapse with the zombie weight. He has to blow up the bridge. And that's a heartbreaking thing because Rick spent so much integrity and so much time and energy on making sure this bridge was made, and he has to destroy it. He goes down with the bridge. His whole story arc being he wants to find his family, and he realises he found them and now he can let go. And we just have Daryl watching from afar as Rick blows himself up at the bridge, and it's sad. Such a powerful moment, this moment. So good. Such an iconic one as well, with Rick with his Colt Python one more time. I do like that Jadis saves Rick because it's kind of Jadis's final redeeming moment, as it were, because she was a very, very weird character and very annoying, I might say. But I think this kind of redeems her character a little bit, because it's like if you save the main character of the show, then you're going to be a more likeable character. And that means we get more Andrew Lincoln in the Walking Dead universe. May it not be in the show, but at least somewhere. Probably in the movies. Eventually, maybe in the movies, but maybe not in the movies. Who fucking knows at this point? But anyway, to cap off this final episode of this list, we have this lovely moment in like a flash forward for like 7 years or so, where we see an older Judith with Rick's cowboy hat and a katana with a Colt Python, and we realise it's Judith Grimes saving, what's her face's group? Magnus group, that's it, yeah. Lovely last moment to end off this episode and really keep us intrigued for what the future of The Walking Dead will be for the final few seasons after Rick's departure. So yeah, great episode, great list. Just to recap, the episodes were: at the 10th spot, Beside the Dying Fire; the 9th spot, The Calm Before; the 8th spot, This Sorrowful Life; at the 7th spot, we have Days Gone By; at the 6th spot, we have The Killer Within, of course; the 5th spot, we have The Day Will Come When You Won't Be, God forbid. Number 4, we have No Sanctuary. Number 3, we have Too Far Gone. Number 2, we have No Way Out. And at number 1, we have What Comes After. Guys, this episode has been a journey. My voice is completely shredded to pieces, so I'm going to leave you with this list. If you agreed with this list, let me know. If you didn't, let me know your list in the comments. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you guys in the next video very, very soon. Goodbye.